time to take you all the way to the United States, where a lot is happening, whether it be on the Middle East front, where five important countries, Arab countries, as well as one Palestinian leader, have sent a letter to Marco Rubio in order to highlight the recent statements that have been made by Donald Trump regarding the relocation of the Palestinians from Gaza and from Palestine to neighboring countries, and they have highlighted their reservations regarding that. Also, the Israeli military assault on Gaza, as per an updated report, has killed more than 61,000 people, because thousands of people have been added who were missing or are now presumed dead. The US president has also expected today to stop the US engagement with the UNHRC, as well as stop aid to UNRWA from the US side. This and more is going to be discussed in this segment. We've been joined by Syed Muhammad Ali, lecturer at the Johns Hopkins University. Ali, thank you very much to have joined us. Ali, let's begin with this letter that these five Arab countries, as well as a Palestinian official, have sent to Marco Rubio that regards the recent statements made by Donald Trump regarding the displacement of Palestinians to neighboring countries. Will there be any further development as far as this is concerned? What is the US point of view on it? Is this point of view from the US side non-negotiable from in your point of view, or could something happen, or a leeway be reached?
It's still early to say if this letter itself will have much impact. I mean, it's just a letter sent to the Secretary of State, who has his hands full, given that U.S. aid is being thought of as unnecessary and a bowl of worms. So, I mean, that has huge implications globally. So I don't know how much attention this letter will receive, but, hearing President Trump, just very, very recently breaking sort of, coverage on Al Jazeera, talking, sort of giving the analogy, if you will, of how Israel is like a pen, on his huge desk. And, saying that, he didn't want to comment on much on the situation in Gaza, but saying that Israel is a very small, piece of land, a very small territory, and it's their brains and brawn which has managed, helped them to sustain themselves. But sort of signaling that, Israel perhaps does not have enough territory. And if you link that with earlier statements, where there's been, Jared Kushner had been talking about this a year or longer ago. And President Trump also saying that, now, Gaza is like kind of unlivable and it has to be built up from scratch. And Jared Kushner had said this can be prime property. So, and also the suggestion that maybe the Palestinians should move to other Middle Eastern states. So there is, which creates a lot of complications for Egypt and for Jordan, where 60% of the population is already of Palestinian origin, right? So how these Arab states are going to now manage what's going to emerge out of the Netanyahu and President Trump meeting. President Netanyahu is, Netanyahu is still, under ICC, arrest warrant. And, yet he came to the U.S. I mean, the U.S. does not really acknowledge the jurisdiction of the ICC. So, there's a lot of moving parts here. So in that, I mean, this letter is, it will not have that kind of gravitas, just a letter written by, a few Arab states to the Secretary of State. But there are sort of things happening within the Middle East, which we can also think about vis-a-vis Iran and other Middle Eastern countries.
Speak of Iran, the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson has also said yesterday that the international community should help Palestinians secure their right to self-determination rather than pushing other ideas that would be tantamount to ethnic cleansing, quote-unquote ethnic cleansing. How do you see this statement in the wake of these statements by Jared Kushner, by Donald Trump, and by others?
Well, I mean, Iran is not the only one that said that. I mean, if you look at Amnesty International, one of the most prominent human rights agencies, it has also, published very damning assessments of what has happened over the past 16 months. And for Iran, there are, Iran itself is kind of cornered, if you will, right now. On the one hand, it has lost, many of its proxies, including, for instance, Syria, like what's happened in Syria right now, what's happened with sort of the weakening of Hezbollah politically and militarily in Lebanon, and the Israeli incursion there, as well as what's happened. I mean, yes, Hamas has crawled out of the dust, but I mean, if you look at what's happened to Gaza and what's happening to the West Bank right now. So these were all actors that Iran had exerted influence over. So barring the Houthis, which have very limited capacity, Iran itself had a confrontation with Israel. So I mean, there are a lot of regional actors, sort of analysts who are saying that this is the space to watch, because are we going to see something like a JCPOA, like an attempt by the US to broker talks with Iran, or on the other hand, like how desperate is Iran and insecure is Iran now feeling? Is it going to go and try and acquire nuclear capability to create some kind of a deterrent? And Israel itself, I mean, while it would love to go in and and inflict further damage on Iran, it would have a cost. I mean, Iran has lost some capacity, but it still has a lot of capacity to create a lot of disruption, not take on Israel by itself. And Israel will probably want the US to help it, which is the calculus which might be going on in the minds of policymakers here. And on the flip side, for Iran, I mean, Iran cannot do much to Israel by itself, but I mean, it can inflict some damage, but it can create also destabilization within the Middle East at large. In Iran now, as I think Wali Nasser, I was hearing him speak recently, also commented that Iran is now also, on the one hand, it is certainly weakened and cornered, right, and is insecure that it might be facing a more aggressive assault. And on the other hand, it is less isolated, vis-a-vis other regional players, like Saudi, and it's been, the foreign ministers have been meeting, and there have been, it is now less isolated in the Middle East and for other Middle Eastern countries for their own reasons. I mean, they certainly would not want to host 2 million or more Palestinians. And I mean, that will create a lot of, difficulties politically, a lot of difficulties within their own countries. And, then there could be cross-border issues, which enhances friction with Israel. So, the situation between the US and Israel and Iran is certainly something to watch over these coming weeks and months.
All right. So, Ali, also, we all remember the Donald Trump statement, America first. Now that Netanyahu is in the US as we speak, we don't know what's going to be discussed. We'll know in the next couple of hours or the next couple of days, because he's extended a little bit his visit to US. First, he was supposed to come for a few days. Now he's going to stay, I think, if I'm not wrong, till Saturday. Now, the White House Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, tells Axios that the whole destruction that has happened in Gaza because of Israel, whose prime minister is right now in the US, will take 10 to 15 years for the reconstruction to happen in Gaza and Palestine. That is maybe one of the reasons why they're asking the Palestinians to move to other countries, so that this reconstruction could take place, something that the Arab side and the Palestinians are not accepting. In this whole America first scenario, do you feel the American 100 or 100+% backing of Israel as far as arms and ammunition is concerned, as far as its stance is concerned towards the Middle East, will continue, or will the US change stance?
Well, there was a certain amount of uncertainty, which led to the initial ceasefire because I think even with Netanyahu, he had lost some of the trust with President Trump because they had a great relationship the last time around, but when Trump had to, there was this whole controversy around who won the last elections, and Netanyahu was very quick to congratulate Biden, which had upset President Trump. So, I mean, now it seems, I mean, he's like the first head of state to be visiting the US, that those fences have been mended, because of self-interest. However, it seems that there is, I mean, there are other issues in the world that the US is involved with as well, and the Russia and Ukraine situation, for instance. I mean, there's no easy fix to that as well. Now, is President Trump going to, and he's having friction with European leaders, and they might diverge in terms of, their support to the Ukraine. For them, it's more, more of an immediate threat. But is he going to be willing to, use his levers of influence to try and reach a settlement where the Ukraine has to concede territory to Russia, right? I mean, is that the kind of peacemaker that he's going to be? Is he going to be able to revive then the Abraham Accords in some form, shape, or the other? I mean, yes, the suggestion might be that, this place needs to be demoed and rebuilt, but for whom, right? I mean, right now, I mean, Israel has, I mean, in the West Bank, it already exerted a lot of control, but now it is, Gaza was kind of hands off for Israel, but now Israel has much more penetration there. So it's, it's not going to be as simple as, building up apartments and letting the Palestinians back in. I mean, there is this fear, and it's a long-standing intergenerational fear of the Nakba, right? So, and there are other issues at hand for the US. I mean, like the trade wars, the increasing animosity with China, and that's closer to America because of the Panama Canal. And it is exerting a lot of pressure there. So the US, has its hands full, being still the most powerful country in the world. So, it's going to be, it's within this broader context that, some kind of face-saving exercise has to be found, but will that face-saving exercise, be it Abraham 2.0, will that deliver anything meaningful for the Palestinians? I mean, that is the real question.
Real question. I'd like one last answer to my question, but a very, very short and concise. The US president is expected to stop UN engagement with the UNHRC. Secondly, he's also going to halt the funding for UNRWA. What impact is this going to have? What are your expectations?
Well, I mean, it's going to shrink its multilateral commitments also with the NATO states, but most importantly, look at what's happening to USAID. I mean, USAID is the largest bilateral donor in the world. The US, because of its contributions to various development agencies, which do also its bidding, it is really, it's done a stop order. So all the work that was happening in health and education in Africa, elsewhere, barring some humanitarian, relief within sort of the Gaza situation, all that work is stopping long-term development projects and immediate humanitarian aid. So, this is really something where, for the Dems, they saw this as a carrot to make, other countries do their bidding. And this carrot has suddenly been jerked away, and let's see what happens in these next 3 months. I mean, is US aid going to be abolished? Is it going to be taken over by, by the State Department? I mean, this has broad, long-standing implications.
Another long-standing implication, again, a very, very short answer, is on the peace deal. The US president says that he has no guarantees that the peace is going to hold. Now that talks for the second phase of this peace deal are going to happen in Doha, what are the expectations as far as that is concerned?
Well, that's the so I mean, if it's the signaling is that, first it's like I'm the peacemaker, before I came in, the war stopped and prisoners were handed back, to now I don't know if the peace deal is going to stand or not. I mean, and this is happening while there's conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu. So it doesn't seem like a good omen. I mean, are we going to see a more aggressive stance now where the US and Israel try and sort of diffuse the Irani threat once and forever? I mean, what's going to happen, within Gaza and the West Bank? I mean, his lack of faith is also a signal that, hey, I mean, if the deal breaks, I mean, I wasn't standing by it. So that's the kind of signal.
Question marks, to be very frank, as far as a lot of things regarding the US and regarding the Middle East and regarding aid and regarding so much more hangs out in balance. Basically, the world balance is basically hanging out in front of everybody to see because of the recent US decisions. Let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks, which are going to be, as you yourself have said, extremely crucial. Thank you very much, Syed Muhammad Ali, lecturer at the Johns Hopkins University, to have joined us to discuss these very important issues regarding the US.